how to have a beautiful marriage, and how to stay in love. This is Dive Deep. From the Diocese of Springfield in Illinois, this is Dive Deep, where we dive deep into our Catholic faith. I am Andrew Hansen, and today we are pleased to be joined by Beth Sri. She is a mother of 8 children. She also serves as the Denver coordinator of the Chapter for Life-Giving Wounds. That's a Catholic ministry that helps adult children of divorce. She's also a co-author with her husband of an award-winning book called The Good, the Messy, and the Beautiful: The Joys and Struggles of Real Married Life. Beth, thank you so much for coming on Dive Deep. How are you?
I'm well. How are you, Andrew?
I'm excellent. We're so happy to have you here. We're going to talk about marriage, the good, the bad, the messy, get some good advice from you as well. I first wanted to talk about, the statistics. We hear about marriage right now. Half of marriages, about half, end in divorce. Also statistics coming out that marriage rates in general are plummeting. I want to first get your take on why do you think that's happening? What's going on in our culture right now that marriage just seems to not work?
There's so much brokenness. People come from broken homes all over the place, and so they've never seen what it looks like, or by and large, and of course not everyone, but when you've not seen it, it's hard to envision yourself in that. And that's part of it. I think also media, culture, so many diversions in our world that are trying to pull people apart from that authentic connection and communion of husband and wife, living in love, physically, emotionally, spiritually, all the ways that we're called to. It's easy to just chip away at that with one thing or another.
Excellent. Now I want to talk about your book, The Good, the Messy, and the Beautiful. It definitely gets into the nitty-gritty of marriage, of parenthood, when the rubber hits the road. I want to first talk about the messiness. So I'm going to kind of just talk about the negative here for a quick second. What advice do you have for couples when that messiness occurs, whether it's between the two of them, whether it's raising a family and their children, that messiness that can obviously overwhelm couples and break them apart? Let's talk about that first. What advice do you have?
Yeah, well, Pope Benedict, I forget exactly where it was, but he likened that to the new wine in the wedding feast of Cana, because you get married and you have what I call gooey love. It's, ooh, we love each other. Oh, he touched my hand, And then as the years go on, as the kids keep coming, it's easy to lose that spark, but that is actually what you're supposed to do. Because if it's gooey all throughout and it doesn't get deep and it doesn't get real and it doesn't get beyond that gooey, saccharine, sweet type of love, it's not going to go the distance. And so we found in our marriage, we found in other couples that we've talked to, there's usually some sort of crucial impasse. And that's where God steps in, where you feel your poverty in your marriage and you think, golly, am I even supposed to be here? I don't know. Lord, where are you? You said you'd be with us. And that's where Jesus brings the new wine, just like he did back at the wedding feast of Cana. If we can just stay there and call out to him by the grace of the sacrament, by the grace of our vows, that's where he is. And so it's actually in your brokenness and your poverty that you can gain the strength through him to push through.
Now that's, of course, negative times. Let's say things are going well in your marriage. You got beautiful children, everything seems to be going great, faith-filled, we're doing all the things you just said. What are some tips, advice, so that love can stay energized, that passion, that we stay faith-filled, and we don't take our eyes off the prize? Because, everything's going great, and maybe we don't need to, what are some keys that you think to keep that positivity going in a marriage?
Yeah. The first thing that comes to mind is smiling at your spouse. Well, especially the first time you see them.
It's interesting you say that, because I have 4 boys, and I remember reading one of the advice is to say just smile at your children.
Absolutely. It works for them too. I heard recently an analogy of when you have a dog and you walk in the door and they're like, so excited to see you. To be, not that you're a dog to your spouse, but that same kind of joy and energy, to have someone delight in your presence, we all want that deep down. So when my husband comes home from work, even if I'm in the worst mood and I maybe cut my finger when I'm slicing an onion for dinner, or the kids are out of control, he walks in the door. I've tried to practice the art of, you're home, go, stop what I'm doing, go and give him a hug, so good to see you, Things like that, like a little thing like that, can really revolutionize a marriage that's hurting, because all of a sudden there's delight and joy just in the other person, not you didn't take out the trash again. Oh, you're finally home. The grumbles. But if we can just get back to that place of joy and delight, it can be really powerful.
It's interesting you say that, because I remember one of the homilies given by our Bishop Thomas John Paprocki. He talked about how all too often when you ask a couple who's about to get married or in a relationship, why are you in that relationship, or why do you want to get married? A typical answer is, he makes me happy, she makes me happy. But the answer should be, I want to get married, I love him or her because I want to make them happy. And I remember hearing that, and I'll admit, in that moment, I'm like, boy, if you would have asked me when I was about to marry my wife, and you asked me that question, I probably would have said, well, yeah, she makes me happy. I wasn't thinking, well, no, I love her, I want to make her happy. I want you to kind of get your reaction to that, and it's a total flip, especially from our culture of like the me mentality. It's about me. Like when you hear that, what goes through your mind as you talk to so many couples around the country?
Absolutely. I mean, I think of St. Paul, outdo one another in showing love and service. It should be a sort of competition in an ideal world. But we know we get tired, things come up. So I think it's just taking that time to think, what would honor my spouse today? What does he need? Or even asking your spouse, like, I want to support you, especially if they're going through a rough time. Like, what do you need from me? How can I help? Because the word, Eve was created to be a helpmate for Adam, that spouses really can be that unique help. I think of, my husband and I were just joking, when I've had our 8 children, I don't need him to pretend to know how labor works. I don't need him to do a lot of things in the midst of me going through that. I just need him to hold my hand. That presence together can really just, I don't know, for me it just gives me the strength to keep going and doing new things and take risks and throw myself out there.
Now, I know some people might look and say, oh, Beth, you and your husband, you got this great marriage, you got 8 beautiful kids. Look, you're marriage experts, you go around the country talking about, you got everything put together. Give us an example in your life where you and your husband had a messy moment, where you had everything's hitting the fan. Tell us about that story and what ultimately you and your husband did to overcome that.
That's a good one. I'm thinking of a particular issue in our home. We have a child that is lovely, but has very big emotional reactions. And my response is to see the child, to be with the child, to work with the child, and he has a hard time tolerating anything. And so it's that melding. We both have something that's right. That there's an issue there, and absolutely it's going to lead to character flaws. We need to deal with it. But I also have a piece of the puzzle, and that's the child's heart that needs to be reverenced and accompanied in the midst of that correction. So it's like we're on opposite ends of the table with this issue, and it's like the back and the forth. And it's in the midst of the heated times when things get escalated with this particular child that we both have to still be cognizant of, yes, he's right, and yes, she's right. This is the reality. We're not going to get this perfect, but we're going to deal with this as best as we can now, regroup, come up with a plan. And this is where I just love my husband. He's so strategic. He's so intentional. He'll see this and he knows it's leading there and he wants to go here, so he's course correcting. So he's just a great leader. And it's easy for me to follow leadership that I can trust and that has proven the test of time, and that he actually values my voice. And that's been something that's shifted within our marriage just even over the last few years. There's
always communication always seems to be the number one thing. I remember in one of your talks, I don't know if it was you or your husband, you talked about how you as a husband, I can speak as a husband, you might think your wife is thinking this, or when you say something, it comes out, you think it's fine, but it's really, from her perspective,
absolutely,
it's the opposite. So how much do you and your husband, is that, do you almost over talk about things? You always say, oh, be a good communicator in your marriage, but I guess
right,
as a husband, you might be thinking, I am a good communicator. You don't realize what you're doing, though, is actually not helping.
Right.
I know that's a big question.
Right.
What should we do?
Yeah, I think we as women expect men sometimes to just know, and that's not fair.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's not fair.
It's been said. No.
But we've been conditioned by all the rom-coms and the chick flicks to just expect men to hear us say it once and then they fulfill all our desires, So I think, saying, it would be really great if you brought me flowers today. sure, it makes it less of a, oh, you wrote me flowers, but it's also like, he loves you and responded, or, hey, I have this idea and I need you to just listen and not shoot it down because I'm feel it's hard for me to tell you this. This is my idea. You know, I did that when we bought the house we live in now because we had just moved to the area. But this awesome house with this awesome yard and awesome mountain view came on the market 9 months after we got there. And so I said, just hear me out. The house is for sale. Can we please look at it? And he's like, oh, we still have things in boxes. And I said, please. And we did, and everything kept falling into place, and that's where we live. So I think when we can set each other up for success, that's really a sweet spot. Presume good, presume positive intent, benefit of the doubt. Like assuming you're on the same team and acting that way tends to bring people along more than just stay away, don't come near, or I don't want to tell you that, or shouldn't you know that? Mm-hmm. Those types of things.
I also want to talk about you raising children, 8. I have 4, and boy, I feel like I'm in the throes of things raising 4, and you got double what I have. So this question comes from my heart, especially because I feel like our home life can be crazy. Heck, you wrote your whole book on that. How do you manage all those children, but how do you manage the personalities, but also ultimately to not have that impact your marriage? What do you and your husband do to strategize amongst all these kids' relationships, needs, wants, but also at the same time make sure it's not impacting the two of you?
Yeah, that's a great question. We are very good when we're able to about taking walks together. That's been really a really key way for us to reconnect at the end of the day, especially I would say 5 years ago when we could start leaving kids at home. So we would have dinner and then we would have the kids start cleanup and we would just take off and walk for 1.5 miles or so. And it was getting outside. It was the fresh air. It was standing side by side and like exercising, like moving somewhere. So then we could check in with each other. We still do it as we're able, but life's just in a different stage right now. So that was really helpful. And date nights are huge. Business meetings, so that date night doesn't become a business meeting, were really important for us as well. But also, I just love our kids. Like, I feel like, it may sound weird to say, but I feel like my children are my life's work. You know, like I've poured my heart into them, all the sacrifices I've made, and they're free to do with that whatever they want, you know? I pray they use it for the Lord's service, but I just delight in them so much, and they bring me so much joy. And so for the two of us to come together and just talk about what they're doing and what God is doing in their lives, they're really at an age, like our oldest daughter's married, she's expecting. We have 2 kids in college that are starting to figure things out, you know, and then high school and prom and, you know, even our freshman son, you know, it's just really awesome. And so I would say to people who are like a little maybe nervous about being open to life or open to large families, it's the best adventure. I am so glad, and there's no way I could imagine my life without any of them.
Now, I want to flip the script on that. That's awesome advice. I want to talk about couples now. They hear what you say, and they're like, that sounds amazing, but we can't get pregnant, or whether they can't adopt, or the adoption process, of course, maybe just takes forever, and it doesn't come through for them.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for those couples? How can they make their marriage still beautiful despite that sorrow, that want, that desire to have children?
Absolutely. I first just want to say that that's a tremendous grief. Just the lack of that and the powerlessness that is felt in the midst of that. Like I really just empathize with couples that are experiencing that. I think they're still called to be fruitful. It's not going to look the same, obviously. But just really investing in others and caring for others in a deep way. Not in like a, oh, how you doing? Sure, you can stay at our place tonight type of way, but like pouring out your heart for them and receiving their heart back. You know, really building up. I know there are folks out there that will be spiritual parents. You know, there's a gal I know because I know one of her spiritual daughters who has, you know, probably like 20-some spiritual children around the country, and she and her husband will just go visit them, and it's beautiful because they're like bonus parents who can minister, who can love, who can parent mother, father to these couples who need that extra boost, maybe because their own mother and father weren't capable of seeing their hearts or reassuring them or treasuring and delighting in them. And so there's a myriad of ways that God could call on this couple in their union, in their one flesh union, to still bring forth life. It's going to look different for everybody, but our Lord is so creative and so powerful, and He will do it.
Let's end with this. And you kind of touched on it a little bit already, but whether it's a couple who's about to get married or someone who's been married for a little bit, or 25, 50, 75 years, and they say, Beth, how do I stay madly in love? Where things are going great, but I want them to stay great. I love my spouse, and I want to continue to just be madly in love with him or her every day I wake up. What should we be doing? What advice do you have for us?
I would first say pray, because your love will run out, and you need Jesus' love in you to go the distance. And you need Jesus' love in you to love your spouse when you get to the cross. Because marriage is meant to sanctify us. It's not all roses and halos. And so when that day comes, you need to be fueled up on prayer so that you can stay strong.
Excellent advice. Beth Sri, thank you so much for coming on Dive Deep.
You're welcome, Andrew. Thank you.
You're welcome.